And you were described as bringing tremendous versatility and a spirit of partnership to your life's work. Could you talk a little bit about that?
Um, well, when it comes to partnership, I have to admit that playing chamber music is really one of the favorite things that I get to do personally for me. I feel very, very fortunate to be able to do that on a regular basis with wonderful, wonderful colleagues. I don't think I could really exist as a musician without that. I think you need to work with other people. You need to work with good people to maintain yourself as a musician. It's good for your health as a musician to be in the company of other good musicians. Contrary to the popular myth of the lone musician, lone wolf, being holed up in the practice room and never seeing the light of day. I mean, yes, I think practicing is very, very important, but whenever there is a chance to work with somebody really good, I take it because it's always fun, and you learn a lot, and you have somebody to bounce your ideas off of. It's sort of at best it's a real give and take, which I think is extremely important. Also for listening, I have to say, making music is really about listening before it's about producing any sound. You need to listen even before the very first note, even when it's a solo piece, especially when it's a solo piece, I think. You really need your ear needs to be ahead of you ever so slightly all the time. You're listening from the outside and you're listening from the inside, and coordinating those two kinds of listenings is really hard, and it's really, really crucial, I think, for making music. And that's something that I realize more and more and more. The more you're able to listen, the better you listen, the better musician you are. And it's easy to think that you know how to listen, but it's when you make a step forward and suddenly you hear things that you never heard before. When you play the same piece, for example, over several years, and suddenly you hear things that in your playing that you never heard before, then it makes you realize that, oh, I'm now listening more, which means before that I thought I heard everything and I wasn't even close to hearing everything, which only means that now I'm probably not hearing everything either. It just makes you realize, how little you know and how much more you have to learn. And I think chamber music is a crucial element in that, in development of the capacity to listen.
Recently in recordings, you juxtaposed Brahms and Schoenberg, and then you recorded solo Schubert, and you've done some collaborative work. What's coming up for you now?
I have a few ideas for recordings that I'm working on, and hopefully will come to fruition soon. One of them is actually a concerto recording that would juxtapose Haydn and Ligeti. So that would be. I know it's a little offbeat, maybe, but I think it can go very, very well. And so, it's in the works right now.
So why Ligeti? And
well, I think the Ligeti concerto, I think, is really one of the most wonderful masterpieces of this genre, certainly in recent years, and I think in the past, maybe even the past century, really. And to me personally, there is, beyond the Hungarian connection of, Haydn, of course, being a composer, that worked most of his life in Hungary, and even, in one of the concertos has an Hungarian gypsy, if you will, finale. I think it goes beyond that. I think they share a certain exuberance and this mischievous luminosity to it. It's like this this good-natured but also tongue-in-cheek kind of humor that you really find in both in the Ligeti piano concerto and in the Haydn concertos. I mean, in other words, the Ligeti concerto has a lot of Haydnesque attitude to it. It's not so much, it's not motifs, it's not anything in the actual music itself, except of course for the Hungarian touch. But it's really the spirit of it, the character of it, this sort of tongue in cheekness that I really really like. And so my idea is really to couple the concertos with capriccios by both composers. There are really wonderful, extraordinary Haydn capriccios and a couple of Ligeti early capriccios that are also very attractive. So that would be the idea behind that whole program.
Well, that'll be interesting to hear when it comes out.
Yeah, I hope so. I like to experiment with programs sometimes. And something that I'm supposed to do soon is sort of experimental. I haven't tried it yet, so I'm not sure it works, but I'm curious to try it, which is a program of an hour with no break, of mostly short pieces by Debussy and Beethoven. And the fact that they really have nothing to do with each other normally, I found quite attractive. And I thought of maybe trying to see if in certain cases, in very specific cases, they may have to do something with each other after all. Of course, not in a conscious way, or not in a planned way. But basically the idea is to take a piece like the Waldstein Sonata, which has a last movement that's all about mixing harmonies and misty sonorities that really, come pretty damn close to Debussy, I think. Given how early the piece is, it's, just 1804, and Beethoven basically invents Debussy in a way. I thought, well, it would be fun to maybe look for other pairs like that, just for the fun of it, really. I mean, I'm not trying to say anything too profound about it, but basically it's coupling Beethoven bagatelle and Debussy pieces that are of the same character. Not just bagatelles, but actually, no, in the Beethoven case it is bagatelles, but in Debussy it's preludes and images, and basically creating pairs that seem to be about the same thing. The dance of Puck, that of course we know from Debussy, I think appears, in Opus 33, number 2, which is a bagatelle of Beethoven. Of course, he didn't call it that, but for this purpose, I decided to call it that. And basically that's the idea, to put them side by side and make them interact, so to speak. Of course, can't guarantee that it works, but I'm curious to try it out.
That's very, very interesting. Will you record it eventually if it works out? Will you include it in your...
I think so, yeah. I think I want to try it out first and see if it actually works. I think it does. I think it does. I think it can work as a maybe as a concert. Whether it works as a recording or not would be interesting to think about. But I think it does work as a, at least in theory. I think. Well, I have to admit that I like the fact that, for example, this Waldstein Sonata, the slow movement, the last movement, which, like I said, is about all those sonorities and the long pedals and mixing sonorities, to me brought to mind Debussy's Reflet dans l'eau, which, Debussy writes to his publisher that he's sending him his latest experiments in musical chemistry. I think is absolutely the most ingenious way to describe this music, because this is exactly what it is. I mean, you hear this, the Reflet dans l'eau, and you see all kinds of colorful solutions, mixing with each other, liquids. I mean, solutions as in liquids, not as in solutions.
Right.
And one day I noticed that they actually have the same notes as a theme. In other words, the Waldstein Sonata has this bass, and the Debussy Reflet dans l'eau has also the bass. Basically the themes are based on the same sequence of notes, which I'm sure it's pure coincidence. But the fact that both pieces are about fusing different sonorities together, that's not a coincidence. I mean, that's what both those pieces are about. So that's basically the idea.
I really want to thank you for doing this.
Thank you.
I appreciate the fact that you were very candid about what you're feeling about these composers and your philosophy. We really appreciate it.
Oh, thank you. Thanks for calling. Sure.